Welcome back again to the Fedrix lens. Rome did not invent the obelisk. It did something more revealing. It took it. That is the next turning point in the story. By the time Rome encountered Egyptian obelisks, the form was already charged with meaning. Egypt had not only given it birth, Egypt had taught it how to stand inside sacred space, royal order, temple prestige, and visible authority. The obelisk was already a disciplined monument of power. Rome recognized that immediately, because empires do not only conquer land. They collect prestige. They absorb symbols, seize forms, and reposition the most powerful objects of older civilizations inside their own world. That is one of the clearest things Rome did across the ancient Mediterranean. It did not always destroy the monuments it encountered. Often it took them, moved them, and made them speak Roman. That is exactly what happened with the obelisk. This matters because it changes the story. If Rome had only admired Egyptian obelisks from a distance, then the form would still belong mostly to Egypt. But Rome did something else. It physically uprooted obelisks from their original sacred landscape and transferred them into imperial space. That act was not passive appreciation. It was possession. The monument was no longer only Egyptian stone. It became transferable authority. And that phrase gets us to the heart of Episode 3. What Rome understood was simple. If a form already carries prestige, sacred gravity, and monumental seriousness, then an empire does not need to invent a new language from nothing. It can take an existing language and make it serve a new center of power. That is what the obelisk became in Rome. Not a ruin, not a curiosity, not a museum object, an imperial monument. The Roman world was especially suited to this kind of adoption. Rome was not a civilization obsessed only with originality. It was a civilization of absorption, adaptation, and scale. It took gods, styles, techniques, engineering practices, and symbols from other worlds and folded them into its own expanding order. That did not make Rome weak. It made Rome powerful. One of its greatest strengths was recognizing what already worked and recentering it under Roman control. The obelisk fit that pattern almost perfectly. It was tall, serious, unmistakable, and already associated with sacred and royal authority. Once transplanted into Rome, it could begin doing new work immediately. It could stand in imperial settings. It could intensify public spectacle. It could connect Rome to the prestige of ancient Egypt while proving that Egyptian greatness now stood under Roman command. That is an important distinction. Rome did not merely borrow the obelisk. Rome subordinated it. The form kept its monumentality, but its setting changed. Its visual force remained, but its owner changed. Its meaning did not disappear, but its center of custody changed. And once that happens, the monument enters a new life. One of the clearest historical anchors here is Caligula. During the early Roman Empire, obelisks were transported from Egypt into Rome as part of imperial ambition, prestige, and display. The movement itself mattered. These were not small objects. They had to be extracted from their original world, carried across great distance, and resited inside a completely different civilizational order. That required planning, labor, engineering, and political will. So when we say Rome took it, we should hear the full weight of that sentence. Rome did not just copy a shape. Rome moved the actual monument. That is what makes this chapter so powerful. The obelisk becomes an object in motion, a symbol uprooted from one sacred geography and inserted into another. In Egypt, part of its force came from belonging. In Rome, part of its force came from successful transfer. The empire could now say, in stone, what empires often want to say in every other medium. What was once theirs is now ours. That is why this episode should not be reduced to simple looting language, even though conquest and possession are clearly part of the story. The deeper issue is not theft alone. It is repurposing. Rome did not move obelisks to hide them away. It moved them to display them, to stage them, to let them continue operating, but now inside Roman spectacle, Roman space, Roman centrality. That changes the monument without changing the form. And that is one of the most important lessons in the whole series. A monument can survive physically, while its civilizational custody is completely transformed. The obelisk proves that. Under Rome, the form no longer stood only as part of Egyptian solar and temple order. It could now participate in imperial pageantry, public scale, and the visual language of conquest. A monument once rooted in one world was now helping stabilize another. That is why the Roman chapter matters so much. It is the first great transfer, not just of stone, but of symbolic authority. This is also where the obelisk begins to reveal one of its deepest strengths. It can cross worlds. Some monument forms are so bound to one theology, one people, or one landscape that once uprooted, they lose much of their force. The obelisk is different. Its force survives the move. In fact, the move becomes part of the force. Transport itself becomes proof of power. Reciting becomes proof of dominion. Rome understood that. And because Rome understood it, the obelisk could begin a second life far from the world that first raised it under the Egyptian sun. That second life did not erase Egypt, but it did place Egypt's monument inside Rome's story. And that is what empires do best. They do not only conquer bodies and borders, they conquer memory. They take what once signified power elsewhere and make it stand upright in their own center. The obelisk in Rome is exactly that kind of act. It has captured prestige, moved authority, recentered monumentality. And once Rome had done that, the form could never again be understood as only Egyptian. That does not mean Egypt became irrelevant. Quite the opposite. Egypt remained the deep source of the monument's seriousness. But Rome proved that this seriousness could be transplanted. It could survive transfer. It could be made to serve a new imperial order without losing its visible force. That is the hinge. Because once a monument can do that, it becomes available for future worlds too. And Rome would not be the last world to claim it. The next transformation would be even stranger. Because the obelisk would not only move from one empire to another, it would move from one sacred order into another. And that is where the next chapter begins. Rome took the obelisk into empire. But Christian Rome would do something harder. It would make the same monument stand inside a new holy order. Rome proved the obelisk could survive transfer. But the next world to claim it would do something even stranger. It would give the monument a new sacred order. If this video made you see the world a little differently, go ahead and smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Let me know down below what should I cover next. I appreciate you all so much. Catch you in the next video. Look closer, see further, decide for yourself.